This is the next episode of the Guerrilla Cooking series. And I decided, you know what? Let's go back to Korea. So let's do a really simple one that you can do in a canteen cup or inside your mess kit. I'm going to do this inside the mess kit. I'm going to do Korean kimchi guk or Korean kimchi soup. Now I did find out that GK apparently means stew, guk means soup. Every restaurant I was at here in the States and when I was overseas, they would call kimchi soup kimchi GK. Apparently that means kimchi stew. Now, the ingredients for this are extremely simple. What you need is kimchi, some type of pork meat, and onions. Now, you can use either white onions, and if that's the case, you're going to use a small one, or you can use green onions, also known as winter onions. If you're using those, it looks like probably 2 is what you want. And then you cut that up to the size you want. Now, for onions on this one, I'm going to use some minced onion. So let's jump in here, get our stuff set up. So first off, we need kimchi, and I'm not going to open the can. I'm going to use some of what I got left in my fridge, which ain't much. You want the kimchi and the juice. Then you're going to add your pork product. I'm going to use discount Spam for this one. The recipes all said some type of pork type meat. So Spam, cut up pork chop, ham, whatever you have available. Hell, you could probably get away with using some type of sausage in here too, like a Vienna sausage. Cut it up to whatever size you want. Add it in. This is a lot more of fat than the salty brine like you see in Spam. Interesting. This is the first time I'm actually using this for this purpose. Now we're going to add some water in there. Figure about a pint's worth. The reason I'm using these bottles of water is because I got a bunch of these I got to rotate, so they work great for this. Now I'm going to add approximately 1 tablespoon of my minced onion because I'm not using fresh onion. USGI spoon is approximately 1 tablespoon. Let's give ourselves a nice heaping pile. Add that in. Now I'm going to start this now, get my little electric campfire going while I add the seasoning. Seasoning on this. Now it says in the Korean recipes to use broth or stock. It says use seafood stock or beef stock or chicken stock. We're in the field. We're using what we can carry with us, what's shelf stable. So how about some chicken bouillon? Rule of thumb, doing soups and stews, 1 bouillon cube per cup of water. And a pint is 2 cups of water, 16 ounces. Now, other seasonings that go in here. If you're doing this at home, you typically use red pepper paste or cayenne pepper or red pepper flake. And a lot of recipes, you're going to be adding a little of each in there. What I'm going to do, I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of red pepper. So cayenne pepper. Now 1 teaspoon will be just a small pile in here. That's a little bit more than a teaspoon, but it'll work. Now you're also going to add a little bit of garlic. So I got some garlic powder. We're going to add about a teaspoon's worth. When I make this at home, typically I use minced garlic. But in the field, I'm not going to have minced garlic. So about a teaspoon. Now some recipes say to add sugar, a small amount of sugar. I'm not going to. I've never done that. If you want to add sugar, I'd say no more than a teaspoon. So basically sugar to taste. Why would you add the sugar? Well, in case it's a little too spicy or a little too salty. Now I know right now you're probably saying, salty? A security guy, you didn't say nothing about salt. Are you talking about the salt from the meat? No. So we're going to do salt and pepper to taste. So we're going to add just a little bit of salt. And a little bit of black pepper. Yay much. So now we just let that sit back over the fire and heat up. Let it boil, say maybe 5 minutes or so, just to get everything nice and cooked, meld the tastes together, and then sit back and eat. This is one person's portion or one person's worth. Now, difference between kimchi guk and kimchi jjigae. I did a little bit of looking on this. I went over to Minced, a Korean cooking channel here on YouTube. I highly recommend it if you're looking for Korean recipes. She's got a lot of good stuff in there. It's fairly easy to make most of it. Now, according to her, the difference between the soup and the stew, the guk or the jjigae, the soup has less items in it, not as thick, and also not as salty. When you look at the kimchi jjigae recipe she does add kosher salt. Where the guk recipe, she does not. But she does add sugar to both, a small amount. Now the thickener the Koreans typically use when they're doing a stew, it's going to be rice based. So it's going to be pulverized rice. It's going to be rice flour. They use that as the thickener. I would recommend, if you want to get this a little bit thicker, use some white rice. Potentially throw a little bit of it in here, or cook it in another canteen cup or something off on the side on the same fire, and have the two together. How much rice? I'd say half a cup to a cup, because remember, it's going to double or triple in size as you're cooking it. And if you put the half a cup of rice in here while this is cooking, remember, you're going to cook it until the rice has softened. That's going to be your indicator that it's done. Kimchi soup obviously is extremely popular in Korea. It's also something that used to get served occasionally in U.S. mess halls there. That's how I came across it the first time I had it. I have tried it at restaurants here in the U.S. Now, the restaurants here in the U.S., when they do it, they'll add extra stuff to it. They may put in some shrimp. They may put in some tofu. They may put in a seafood cake. You know, maybe they'll put in a little bit of sausage in here and a little Spam. Now, what's the difference between kimchi soup and burejjike, army-based stew? Kimchi soup is more of your natural ingredients typically. You know, it's going to be kimchi, it's going to be the green onion, it's going to be regular pork that you braise or cook and then add in there. Where army-based stew is typically made out of pre-processed stuff, like the pork and beans, like hot dogs, Spam. You get the idea. Now, in Korea, a stew is also considered a casserole, and it's typically served in a communal pot. So if you go to a restaurant and you order a stew, it will come in a great big pot, and then you dish it out of that into your bowl and you eat from the bowl. If you're in Korea, it's not uncommon, at least in the Korean restaurants there on the economy, you'll see them bring out this giant container of the stew, put it in the middle of the table, and then everyone just uses their spoon and they eat it directly from that. Not overly sanitary. That's their way of doing things, you know, whatever. Maybe they're really close friends. So something like that would be acceptable for them. Here in the U.S., not so much. Here in the U.S., when I've ordered it, they usually bring you, one or more bowls, one for each person to spoon out their share. This is really good if it's prepared correctly. Can it be prepared incorrectly? A lot of Katusas, Korean augmentees to United States Army, said the stuff we would get in a U.S. Army mess hall was not prepared correctly. Everyone has their own little recipe for this in Korea, their own slight little variant. And the way the U.S. Army does it is they just take a bunch of kimchi, dump it in a pot, and pour in a shit ton of water. Maybe they'll put in a little bit of garlic, a little bit of black pepper, but that's about it. They won't put anything else in there. They won't put any pork in or anything like that. And typically that stuff is super strong. That was one of those things that really clears out your sinuses. It won't take long to do this soup up. We just go till we boil it for a little bit, mix the flavors together. Just looking over, seeing if I have any other notes I should mention, and no, that's pretty much everything that's covered, so we just got to wait for it to finish cooking. As I said, this is one person's worth, but in a mess kit like this, I could split it up and share it with my battle buddy, especially if we do up a little thing of rice alongside, so both of us have some rice and some soup. Now, Combat Cameraman will not try this because he does not like kimchi soup at all, which is funny because he will try burejjike, but he just cannot stand kimchi soup. When I've made it in the past and he's come by and I've offered him some, he just turns his nose up at it and says, no way. So, if you're doing this inside a Canteen cup, maybe go the 1 can's worth of kimchi, possibly half the can of the Spam, or 1 small can of the Vienna sausages, and then seasoning proportion down, and then use just enough water in the Canteen cup so that you have a decent amount in there, but don't overfill because you don't want it to boil over. Can you make this without adding the cayenne pepper? You could, but it won't be the same. Kimchi soup is supposed to be a little on the spicy side. When it's done correctly, it does clear out your respiratory system. Your nose will start running. You know, it clears you right up. I like making this if I have some type of respiratory illness because it helps, you know, clear everything out, clears all the phlegm out. Are there other Korean recipes I could do in this series? That I'm not sure on. I am considering another recipe that I do eat in Korean restaurants when I get the chance. It's just I have not found a recipe that I think translates over to field cooking that well. And no, I'm not going to say what it is, because who knows, maybe I will end up doing it. We'll see. Now, if you're using fresh onion, remember when you're using that in a super stew, you want to cook it until the onion is transparent or clarified. It's no longer white. Coming across a piece of uncooked or undercooked onion inside a super stew, it's not that pleasant unless you're having French onion soup, and I'll just leave it at that. But even in French onion soup, you fry the onions before you put it in there. Now, we'll make a note here. Someone did ask on the Slum Willie video, am I going to do some bread recipes? Yes. I will be doing some recipes on baking breads in the field, but I'm waiting till springtime to do that because I want to do it over a campfire, or if I have to make some type of improvised oven to bake it inside, I can do it then. Everything's frozen now because at the time this video is being made, it's January. It's January of 2024 and the ground is frozen. So... if I really want to, I can have this right now. But what I'm going to do for myself is I'm just going to boil it a little bit longer for the onions. No reason for you guys to sit around and wait on that. But this is kimchi soup. There we go. If you try it for yourself. It is better if you use fresh onions instead of minced onions, but I'm adding minced onions because maybe I haven't been able to trade for some fresh ones. So there you go, the next recipe. Korean kimchi guk, or Korean kimchi soup. Now, for all my engineer brothers in the Patriot and Militia movements, always remember, Haseans.